There comes a time in every person's life when the crowd can no longer carry you, when the applause no longer fuels you, and when companionship becomes a comfort that keeps you from your calling. When you choose to walk alone, you step into a sacred space where isolation becomes the soil of revelation. Most people fear being alone because they equate it with being forgotten. But what if solitude isn't a sign of rejection, but an invitation to reflection? When everything and everyone gets quiet, when distractions fade, and when the crowd disappears, that's when clarity starts to rise. The noise of the world often drowns out the whispers of destiny. It's hard to hear your own thoughts when you're surrounded by everyone else's opinions. But when you separate yourself from the noise, you begin to hear the voice that truly matters, the one that calls you to something greater than comfort. In solitude, your thoughts begin to organize themselves. You start to see patterns you never noticed before, opportunities that were always there but hidden behind the chatter of everyday life. When you walk alone, you begin to understand the difference between activity and purpose. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're becoming better. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is to sit still and listen to what your spirit has been trying to say all along. That's where revelation lies, in the quiet corners of your mind, in the space between what you think you are and who you're truly meant to be. Walking alone isn't about abandoning people. It's about aligning with purpose. You can't hear divine direction when you're constantly tuned into human distraction. The crowd will always have an opinion. They'll tell you what's practical, what's possible, and what's acceptable. But revelation doesn't come from the crowd. It comes from separation. Every great thinker, every great leader, every great creator went through a season of isolation before they were ready to lead. They had to step away from the noise of others to discover the sound of their own truth. In isolation, you come face to face with yourself. You can't hide behind applause or approval. There's no one to impress, no one to perform for, no one to validate your worth. It's just you and your thoughts, your fears, your dreams, and your faith. That kind of confrontation is uncomfortable, but it's necessary because you can't change what you refuse to face. And you can't lead anyone else until you've learned to lead yourself. Solitude gives you that space to examine your motives, refine your vision, and realign your values. When you walk alone, you begin to appreciate silence. You start realizing that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Every pause holds purpose. Every quiet moment holds wisdom. That's where your creativity expands, your confidence rebuilds, and your connection with something higher deepens. The ideas that can transform your life don't show up in the crowd. They show up when you're willing to be still long enough to receive them. The longer you stay in that place of stillness, the more you begin to hear the whisper of revelation, the kind that tells you who you are, what you're capable of, and what you're called to do. Isolation doesn't just give you revelation, it gives you direction. It helps you see the next step clearly when the whole path still looks uncertain. Sometimes life has to pull you away from everything familiar so you can finally pay attention. The phone stops ringing, people drift away, plans fall apart, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because when you can hear your inner voice clearly, you stop needing the world's approval to move forward. You start walking with conviction instead of confusion. So if you find yourself walking alone, don't see it as loss. See it as a lesson. You're not missing out, you're being molded. That's where revelation grows. In quiet moments that no one sees, but that change everything about how you see yourself. Because the one who dares to walk alone is the one who learns to listen deeply, think clearly, and move boldly toward purpose. Before every elevation, there must come a separation. Life has a way of pulling you away from what's familiar before it promotes you into what's divine. It's not always a gentle process. Sometimes it feels like everything is falling apart, like doors are closing. People are walking away and opportunities are slipping through your fingers. But what looks like rejection is often redirection. What feels like isolation is actually insulation, protection from things and people that can't go where you're headed. Every level requires a new version of you, and the person you are right now may not be ready for the place you're being prepared for. That's why separation isn't a punishment, it's preparation. When life starts removing certain people or situations, your first instinct might be to hold on. You might fight to keep things the same, to keep circles intact, to preserve relationships that once made sense. But destiny doesn't operate on comfort, it operates on calling. The truth is, some connections are seasonal. They were there to help you learn a lesson, build strength, or experience growth. Once their purpose is fulfilled, holding on to them becomes a limitation. Separation happens because elevation demands clarity, and clarity often comes through distance. You can't see the full picture when you're standing in the middle of the noise. The higher you go, the thinner the air gets. Not everyone is equipped to breathe at your next level. Some people are not bad, they're just not built for the altitude of your assignment. If you carry everyone with you, you risk suffocating under the weight of trying to please those who were never meant to understand your purpose. You can love people deeply and still recognize that they no longer fit the direction of your journey. Walking away isn't betrayal when it's in obedience to your purpose. It's wisdom. It's stewardship of your destiny. Elevation requires discipline, and discipline often isolates you. When you start focusing on growth, you'll notice how easily distraction shows up dressed as comfort. Friends might invite you to places you no longer belong, conversations may start feeling shallow, and certain environments that once energized you will now drain you. That's not you changing for the worse, that's you evolving for the better. The light in you is getting brighter, and not everyone will understand that. Some people are comfortable with who you were, not who you're becoming. The moment you decide to grow, you automatically outgrow certain people, habits, and patterns. Separation is also a test of faith, focus, and fortitude. Can you still move forward when the familiar disappears? Can you trust that the loss of what you had is making room for something greater? The road to elevation is rarely crowded because few are willing to let go of what's comfortable for what's possible. But those who do, those who accept the pruning, the isolation, the stretching, they become unshakable because they learn that true power doesn't come from who surrounds you, it comes from who sustains you. When you finally embrace separation, you begin to see how necessary it is. You start to notice that the distance you once dreaded now gives you space to grow. You begin to think clearer, plan better, and walk with more purpose. You stop chasing approval and start chasing alignment. You no longer need everyone to understand your vision because you understand that vision always looks blurry to those who weren't given it. So when people leave, let them. When doors close, thank them. When life shifts, trust it. Every step of separation is guiding you toward elevation. You're being lifted, not left. You're being refined, not rejected. The very isolation that feels uncomfortable today is creating the capacity you'll need for tomorrow's breakthrough. Because before destiny promotes you publicly, it purifies you privately. And in that sacred process, separation always comes before elevation. Loneliness has a way of revealing what comfort often hides. When you walk alone, you come face to face with your own strength, not the strength that's built from applause, but the kind that's forged in silence. Most people avoid solitude because they fear what they'll discover about themselves when there's no one left to impress. But true power isn't born in crowds. It's born in those quiet, uncomfortable moments when you have to push forward with no one watching. Walking alone doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong in ways that comfort never could. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to rely on external motivation. Their approval becomes your validation, their encouragement becomes your energy. But when you're alone, there's no one to cheer you on, no one to tell you you're doing great, no one to catch you if you stumble. That's when you start developing inner strength. You learn to become your own source of motivation. You stop waiting for someone to believe in you and start believing in yourself. It's in solitude that you build the kind of confidence that doesn't need confirmation. Loneliness forces you to look inward. It makes you confront your fears, insecurities, and weaknesses. You begin to understand that strength isn't the absence of struggle. It's the decision to keep going despite it. When no one's there to lift you, you learn how to lift yourself. When no one's clapping, you learn how to celebrate your own progress. That kind of strength can't be taught in books or borrowed from others. It's earned through perseverance. Every tear, every setback, every lonely night adds a layer of resilience that can't be faked. People often mistake solitude for suffering, but solitude is where the strongest version of you is built. It's where you learn discipline. Waking up early even when there's no one to hold you accountable, staying focused when distractions call your name, believing in the vision even when you can't see results. These are the moments that test your character. The world rewards the visible achievements, but real growth happens behind closed doors in the quiet moments of decision. When you walk alone, you begin to redefine what success really means. It stops being about comparison and starts being about consistency. You realize that you don't need to be seen to be significant. You start to value progress over popularity, depth over attention, and purpose over validation. You discover that real strength isn't loud, it's steady. It's the ability to keep showing up when no one's watching. The loneliness that once felt unbearable becomes your greatest teacher. It teaches you how to depend on faith instead of fear, how to find peace in stillness, how to move even when you can't see the next step clearly. Every challenge you overcome in isolation adds to your internal foundation. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to see that you're capable of more than you ever imagined. And soon, the things that used to break you become the very things that build you. There's a kind of freedom that comes with walking alone. You stop needing to explain yourself to everyone. You stop seeking permission to grow. You stop waiting for others to validate your worth. That's when strength turns into power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that governs yourself. The power to stay focused, to stay faithful, to stay consistent even when the world is silent. So when you find yourself walking a lonely path, remember, loneliness is not the absence of strength, it's the evidence of it. The people who can stand alone are the ones who learn to stand tall when life gets heavy. And in the end, that strength becomes your greatest asset. Because when the applause fades, when support disappears, and when the crowd moves on, you'll still be standing, not because someone held you up, but because solitude taught you how to hold yourself together. Not everyone is meant to walk with you, and not everyone can handle the weight of your calling. When you begin to move toward purpose, you'll notice that certain people slowly fade away, not because they dislike you, but because they can't carry what you're carrying. Your vision is personal. It was whispered to your spirit, not theirs. It wasn't announced to a crowd. It was revealed in silence. That's why expecting everyone to understand your path is one of the fastest ways to get discouraged. What's clear to you might look confusing to them because your calling was customized for you. When you have a purpose burning inside you, it changes the way you see the world. You start talking differently, thinking differently, and moving differently. And sometimes that difference makes people uncomfortable. They might say you've changed, and they're right. Growth will always look like arrogance to those who choose to stay the same. But your goal isn't to be understood, it's to be obedient to what you've been called to do. You can't slow down your purpose just to make others comfortable. You can't dim your light to make others feel safe in the dark. Some people are meant to witness your journey, not walk beside you in it. They're observers, not participants. And when you try to drag them along, you end up carrying extra weight that slows you down. Purpose is precise. It requires you to travel light. The longer you hold on to people who don't share your vision, the more resistance you'll feel in your spirit. You'll sense it in your peace, you'll feel it in your focus, and you'll see it in your results. Every time you try to take someone with you who isn't built for the same climb, you'll find yourself having to choose between pleasing people and fulfilling purpose. Learning to walk alone doesn't mean cutting people off in anger. It means releasing them in love. It means recognizing that their chapter in your story has served its purpose. Some were there to teach you patience, some to test your resilience, and others simply to help you see what you didn't want to see about yourself. When their role is complete, holding on doesn't preserve the relationship, it poisons it. Releasing them allows both of you to grow. It frees you to focus on what's next without the weight of what's no longer meant to be. There's a maturity that comes with realizing that not everyone will celebrate your calling. Some will doubt it. Some will criticize it. Some will even try to distract you from it. That's why discernment is so important. You need to recognize the difference between those who are connected to your destiny and those who are simply comfortable with your history. The people who truly believe in you won't need constant explanations. They'll trust your process even when they don't understand it. The rest were never meant to see what you see, and that's okay. Walking alone teaches you the discipline of focus. It keeps your heart from being divided. When you stop needing agreement from others, you start walking with authority. You no longer hesitate because of their disbelief. You move because of your conviction. You start realizing that your mission is too big to wait for consensus. Purpose doesn't require everyone's approval, it just needs your obedience. You were not designed to be understood by everyone. You were designed to impact those who are meant to receive what you carry. So if people start falling away as you rise, let them. Don't chase what's choosing to leave. Every departure is divine direction, clearing space for alignment. The ones who are meant to walk with you will meet you at the next level, not the current one. Your calling doesn't need a crowd, it needs courage. And once you learn that not everyone can handle your calling, you stop seeking company and start seeking clarity. Because purpose doesn't ask who's coming, it simply asks, are you ready to go? When you begin your journey, you'll find that many people are eager to walk beside you. They're drawn to your energy, your ambition, and the excitement of something new. But as the path starts to narrow, as challenges increase and sacrifices become heavier, the crowd begins to thin. Not everyone who starts with you is built to stay with you. Walking alone isn't always a choice. Sometimes it's a revelation. It's how you discover who's truly aligned with your purpose and who is simply attached to your presence. There's a difference between those who walk with you out of loyalty and those who walk with you out of convenience. Some people are connected to your success, not your struggle. They celebrate you when you're shining but disappear when your path gets dark. True companionship isn't tested in celebration. It's tested in silence and waiting and hardship. When life challenges you, that's when masks fall off. That's when you learn who's there for your destiny and who is only there for your comfort. Walking alone reveals truth. It exposes motives. It brings clarity to relationships that once looked genuine. And although it may hurt to see certain people fall away, it's necessary. Because the higher you go, the more weightless you must become. You can't carry everyone into your next season. Some relationships are too heavy for where you're headed. They were never meant to go beyond a certain chapter. Letting them go isn't betrayal, it's obedience. It's an act of trust, believing that those who belong in your life will find their way back at the right time, and those who don't will stay behind for a reason. Sometimes life will isolate you to protect you. There are people whose intentions are not bad, but whose energy disrupts your focus. Their doubt can drown out your faith. Their fear can infect your vision. And if you're not careful, you'll spend more time explaining your purpose than walking in it. When you walk alone, you no longer need to justify your dreams. You start to move with confidence instead of seeking confirmation. You learn to trust the process without needing everyone to agree with it. As your circle becomes smaller, your vision becomes sharper. You begin to see that solitude isn't loneliness, it's clarity. You realize that support doesn't always come from those closest to you. Sometimes it comes in the form of unseen grace, inner peace, or new connections that align with your mission. The people who remain when everything else falls apart are the ones who are divinely assigned to your journey. They may be few, but they're solid. You'll learn to value quality over quantity, depth over noise. and truth over familiarity. When you walk alone, you also discover a deeper level of faith. You start to rely less on people and more on the strength within you. The same strength that comes from trusting that you're being guided, even when you can't see the full map. It's in those moments that your dependence on external validation fades and your confidence in your own path grows. You stop fearing who left and start being grateful for who stayed, and even more grateful for who you became in the process. The truth is, walking alone doesn't isolate you, it liberates you. It frees you from false attachments and superficial loyalty. It teaches you to stand firm in your convictions even when no one stands beside you. Because the people who are meant for your purpose will never need convincing. They'll recognize your calling by the way you walk in it. And those who can't see your vision were never meant to shape it. So let time test the circle. Let the process purify your connections. The ones who remain after the silence, after the struggle, after the storm, those are your people. Everyone else was simply part of the lesson that led you to truth. Before destiny becomes visible to the world, it demands to be developed in private. Every person who has ever accomplished something extraordinary has walked through a season where no one noticed their effort, applauded their consistency, or understood their process. That quiet space where progress feels invisible is where transformation begins. Destiny requires solitude before visibility because what's being built inside you must be stronger than the spotlight that will eventually find you. If the foundation isn't formed in silence, the noise of recognition will destroy what was never rooted deeply enough. In the private season, it often feels like nothing is happening. You work, you plan, you sacrifice, and still the world remains silent. You start questioning if your time will ever come, if your prayers are even heard, if your effort matters. But growth rarely announces itself. Seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface. The roots of greatness are invisible at first, hidden beneath the soil of discipline, faith, and perseverance. Just because the world can't see your progress doesn't mean progress isn't happening. What's unseen is often more significant than what's seen. Solitude gives you time to strengthen what success will one day expose. It's easy to desire a platform, but if you're not prepared for the weight of it, the same platform that elevates you can crush you. The private season is where you learn integrity, the ability to do what's right even when no one is watching. It's where you build consistency without applause and commitment without reward. These quiet lessons prepare you for the public responsibilities that come later. Visibility magnifies whatever's already there, and solitude ensures that what's inside you is solid enough to stand the test of exposure. When you're hidden, you also learn patience. The world moves fast, always chasing what's next, but purpose doesn't operate on popularity's timeline. Destiny moves at the speed of maturity. You can't rush divine timing. Every delay, every detour, every season of silence is refining you. The solitude teaches you how to wait without quitting, how to prepare without proof, how to stay faithful when there's no recognition. It's in those moments that character is shaped. Success without character is short-lived, but solitude builds the kind of depth that sustains destiny. Solitude is also where clarity lies. When you step away from the noise, you begin to understand what truly matters. You start separating what's essential from what's just entertaining. You stop chasing approval and start chasing alignment. In quietness, your priorities shift. You begin to see that fame without fulfillment is emptiness, and achievement without purpose is exhaustion. Solitude helps you discover why you do what you do, and that why becomes your anchor when visibility brings pressure. Eventually, the world will see what you've been working on. The fruit will appear, the opportunities will open, and people will call it sudden success. But you'll know better. You'll know it was the years of silence, the nights of prayer, the sacrifices unseen that made it possible. Destiny doesn't bloom overnight, it blossoms after seasons of being buried. The quiet times are not wasted, they are the womb of greatness. So, if you find yourself unseen, don't mistake it for being forgotten. You are being formed. You are being refined for a level of visibility you couldn't yet carry. The solitude is shaping your spirit, sharpening your skills, and preparing your soul for the spotlight. Because when destiny finally unveils what it has been preparing in private, it will not just be a moment of recognition. It will be a revelation of everything that was built in silence. The world will see the success, but you'll know it was solitude that made it sustainable. Keep building, even when you're the only one who sees it. Because the moment you learn to walk alone, you'll realize you were never truly alone. You were walking with destiny all along.